let's begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, well, I'm glad we got a quorum. We've had difficulty the last couple of times and prospectively for August, so we're going to
We
try
used
to.
to not meet in the summer. Yeah. And I'm guessing probably for that reason.
I think it would have been easy to cancel the August meeting had we not had to cancel the June and the July meeting. So I think that would have been in the cards had we been able to do this, all right? And I think, you know, as a group, of course, we'll have maybe some new faces here in November or December, but we should try hard to establish dates that are routine and makeable, and then try to do the best we can to work around that. And we all know we have travel and business and other obligations. All right. Let's start with the approval of the minutes from May 14th, which is the meeting held after the referendum. I didn't have any comments, but anybody have anything material?
I make a motion to approve the minutes.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, okay, good. And then Amy, Finance Director's report.
So the grants and donations, this is the updated listing for April through June. Under the second bullet down, this is a grant for the Elderly and Disabled Transportation Grant. It's budgeted in the general fund, and we are expected to receive the same amount as budgeted. Under the Ensign Bickford tax abatement, at the last Board of Finance meeting, we had just received an abatement application from Ensign Bickford. And then subsequent to that, the Business Development Incentive Committee, along with the Board of Selectmen, reviewed the abatement, and it was subsequently approved. In the Finance Director's report, there is a schedule of the approved abatement schedule. The total abatement amount over a 10-year period is $374,344. Earlier this year, we were notified by both Wells Fargo and Simsbury Bank that they are going to be acquired. Wells Fargo sold their institutional retirement and trust division to Principal Financial Group, and Simsbury Bank is being acquired by Liberty Bank. Both of these acquisitions are expected to finalize in the third quarter of 2019, so September-October timeframe. We have been in contact with the reps from both the banks, and they are ensuring us a minimal to no change, no impact on operations. So of course, we'll continue to monitor to make sure that our service needs are being met. We did complete our fiscal year 19 bond issuance. We bonded for $8.3 million, and there is a schedule of the projects where that money went towards. We secured funding at a coupon rate of 4 to 5% throughout the life of the bond, which would be an interest expense of $2 million. However, we were able to get a bond premium of $1.2 million, which brings our true interest cost down to $834,000 or 1.64%. So we did actually really good there. During the bond issuance process, the town's credit rating was maintained at the AAA bond rating, and a copy of the bond rating report is included in the communications section of the packet. Any questions?
So I just have a comment on the Ensign Bickford tax abatement and that process. I'm a representative on that board, representing the Board of Finance. And we've looked at two, and I'm an advocate of improving the process and also having a much clearer understanding of a budget for this and how each of these applications should be reviewed. I'm one vote on, I think there are 6 members of the board? 6 of the committee? 5? And so it's I don't have any real leverage or pull on that committee. In fact, I don't really think we have a chairman for that committee yet. So I think there's big area for process improvement. And as a Board of Finance, I think we should consider what we think is a reasonable way to approach those things. It ultimately is a decision of the Board of Selectmen, and it's their policy. but since we've been asked to be represented, I'd like to have sort of the backing of the Board of Finance in terms of how we should look at these things. And unfortunately, because we don't have that framework, each of them then gets discussed on its merits rather than the merits of the overall program. And so I just personally would reach out to staff, and I know you are thinking about it, and I hated voting no, but I felt very strongly I had to, just because I didn't think we got to the right place for the right reasons relative to the Ensign Bicker. All right? Yeah.
So the Board of Selectmen did task the Economic Development Commission as part of their work plan with researching business incentives. As part of my manager's adopted goals for fiscal 1920, taking that a bit further, working with the commission, working with them on the research, and actually formulating recommendations. At a staff level, I've also found some, I think, challenges with the current process. We've made administrative tweaks where we could, such as we instituted an application form. We are now requiring staff reports and analysis. So where we were able to make some administrative tweaks, we were able to do so. But really the whole policy, the process, sort of the reasons behind why an abatement might, make sense to proceed, that really needs to be looked at pretty thoroughly. So it is a project that I'm working on, the EDC is working on. So if you do have thoughts, feedback, suggestion, now would be a really great time, over the next few months, if you want to share research with us, or Lisa did, which is terrific, thoughts, it would be very welcome.
Well, I certainly think we should. I have some ideas about that the scope of it and what is, we have, the parameters are not defined enough to satisfy me. Yeah, they're wide open and seem like we went right to the maximum amount very quickly, and that does, and there's no cap on the collective amount of abatements we're going to get. Doesn't seem, so all of those things need to do. So perhaps we could create yet another subcommittee of our group to help and assist in the staff there's a strong advocacy on that committee for the development part, but not, in my view, enough about really thinking about the financial impact of it. And that's our role, all right? And I think Lisa would volunteer.
Yes, I would. Can I follow up on
Sure,
that? First of all,
please.
I wanted to thank you for your representation on that board. Although we didn't have a time to meet, you did ask for input from all board members, and I just want to commend you for that and very much appreciate that. And I support your vote for the reasons you outlined as well. A couple quick questions. I did send some questions to Maria and Amy, and I want to thank you for getting back to me. They were very good answers, and I appreciate it. And to Rob's point, they did demonstrate the need to improve the incentive program. There are certainly gaps. One of the things that struck me is all the press release and press talked about the 140 jobs, but Maria was able to confirm that that's not actually part of the abatement, and they will not be monitoring that, verifying that they're actually created, or reporting out on those. So that's weird, and I think it's important that the public understand that. It's just based on the property development. I thought that was somewhat striking, given the press reports on it. David Gardner did, and this is a question I had, did mention that there'll be about $6 million in personal property exemptions that the state grants as a right. Is that reimbursable by the state? No. So it's an unfunded mandate, so I just would like to point that out. So it's really a $6.3 million abatement when you get down to the bottom of it. And no, Inside Big Fry, I know all the people there, I've toured it, they're a wonderful organization, great job. But our job is to look at it from the financial impact perspective, and there are certainly costs, because we all contribute equally, and when one person or group does not, others are contributing more than their fair share. So we do want to be aware of that. And to Rob's point, although we don't have a vote on it, we do vote on the budget. And if there are a lot of abatements being given, that will certainly impact our thought process as to what the increase should be if we're foregoing revenue. So that's where we would sort of be impactful on the abatement. I did speak with Eric Wellman, and he, again, towards process, mentioned that he is going to advocate putting the information on the website where you can find it. I did try to Google the 690 contract. It comes up with 10 pages of website pages that you have to go through and click on each one to find it, so it's not readily accessible. So to work on making it accessible and transparency. So those were things, but I did want to commend Maria for getting back to me. The answers were very thorough. And to Rob's point, really did demonstrate the need to work on this a little bit.
Any other comments relative to that? Separate item, I'd like to congratulate staff and the town and us for our AAA bond rating. I think and everyone who creates a budget and spends a budget, everyone who pays taxes, everyone who creates jobs and builds houses or apartments or anything else in this town, that is a collective report card that is very, very strong. So congratulations to everybody on that. All right. No action items are necessary relative to your report?
No.
Okay. Great, thank you. Next is defined contribution pension plan and deferred compensation plan request for qualifications.
So this is something that's being brought forth from the Retirement Plan Subcommittee. Back in February, the Retirement Plan Subcommittee had requested from FIA to go back and look at the record-keeping services for the town's DC plans. So the intent of the RFI was to test the market for any possible service charge cost savings. The RFI allows them to go out and just get the information without doing a full RFQ to see if it really makes sense to issue the RFQ. So what they found is that there was potential savings related to the RFI that was put out there, and I'll take you through those in 1 second. But because of the savings that was determined, the Retirement Plan Subcommittee is requesting that we go out and do a full RFQ, which would be of the Board of Finance purview. So if you go to look at the Fiduciary Investment Advisor's presentation that's in your packet, and at the bottom of it, it has an 83. It's called the comparison matrix.
What page are we on? 83. 83?
Yeah.
Next page.
So rows 3 and 4 are highlighted, and you can see that they looked at Mass Mutual, they looked at Empower, they looked at Lincoln, and then they looked at Voya. So if you look at the first highlighted row for the revenue requirement, no proprietary investment requirements, and you go across, you can see that Mass Mutual charges $249 per participant, Empower charges $138, Lincoln charges $101, and then Voya charges $147. We're currently with Mass Mutual, so we are currently with the highest cost firm. And then at the next highlighted row, you'll see that there are similar results related to Mass Mutual and then the firms that were compared to Mass Mutual. I just wanted to note that these savings are mostly to the participant. The participant pays these fees. The only savings, if you will, that the town will see is that we get to benefit from the forfeiture accounts. So the less fees charged to those forfeiture accounts, the town benefits. But really for the DC plans, the participants are paying these fees. So it would be a cost savings to them. I don't know if Kevin has anything to add.
I mean, I think that what part of it is there's so many people that are putting money into the GIC account, the guaranteed income account, that the rest of the employees that are not are really subsidizing the interest rate on the GIC account.
Which is what now? Is it still 3 to 4%?
It's 4%.
Yeah.
Sheesh. Well, I mean, there you go. That's why the fees are so high.
So
Nobody's going to be happy about that. Changing that. Well,
Okay, so any other questions or comments? So we got, this is the RFQ, this is the
RFI, so this is just
RFI,
a,
this is the information they've got. Now
Right,
they
it's
want to
an
go out and
informal
get
test of
formal
the
bids
market.
from all 4 of these people?
Actually, would just be open.
yeah, anybody can respond.
Anybody besides these as well?
Right, these are people that they reached out to get information on their fees.
can I ask a question? Do you know what the breakout of the number of people that are invested in the stable value or GIC account, as Kevin mentioned, as compared to who's not invested in it?
Get that.
Yeah, we could get it, I don't have it offhand. I know the majority are not in the DC plan, but, we can get it.
That's not going to be a fun conversation.
Will,
And the deferred.
will the collective savings exceed the $10,000 cost to do the RFK? Q?
I mean, over time, it will definitely add up.
How much for the town and how much for the participants?
Well, the town is per forfeiture, so we don't know. Whoever comes and goes, that's the money, the person that's not vested, we get the forfeiture money. So I don't know if there's any way to tell that because we don't know who's going to leave. So we don't know how much we're going to get in forfeitures. But per participant, we'd probably have to know the participant breakdown, but
You could follow up.
yeah. I don't know if that
Yeah,
would
so I'm
be-
just trying to cost justify the 10,000.
Right.
On the, excuse me, on the flip side of that, from the town's perspective, what are we getting that justifies having our participants pay, in some cases, almost double? Like, what do we say to justify that?
Right, I mean, I don't think that we're getting extraordinary
Ex-
extra.
Right.
service
We get a
or
toaster
Yeah.
from Mass Mutual or?
I don't think that.
We got a free education day.
Right.
There you go.
Yeah, so we did a request for information. And we found a lower cost producer that is of equal standing. Any one of these four are financially able to deliver the goods. Why wouldn't we just pick the low cost producer off of this information and move on?
Well, I don't know if we can.
Yeah.
This is a tricky one because it's
Can't
not
do
a
that?
town
I thought you had
expense, so
to.
it doesn't
Have to
really.
put it out to bid?
I think you
I think we
should.
really should add a minimum do an RFQ, just
Right.
the terms of our purchasing policy and.
I mean, it's not a town
Equal
expense, so it doesn't really
opportunity.
go with the town's purchasing policy, but
I mean, I think at a minimum, an RFQ that was at least released on our website and the DAS website would be important.
How many employees are in the program again?
we don't know offhand.
Ballpark.
More than 50?
Yeah.
Yeah, because it's also the 457.
And then, so we pay but we pay we pay the participant fee, correct?
We do not. The participant
The
pays the
participant
participant
pays.
fee. So the savings are actually to the participant, not really the town.
Gotcha.
And it is collective, I'm not sure if everybody heard, but it's in addition to the 401, the defined contribution plan, it's also our voluntary 457 plan for the town employees, and then our voluntary 403B plan for the Board of Ed as well.
And we couldn't use the RFI as the basis for an RFQ and not pay $10,000 for someone else to create an RFQ?
I mean, the $10,000 is really for FIA to do it, to administer it in their time, and the value of their time. We could do it in-house for free. It's just a matter of manpower to get it done.
So you will have extra staff in January. Would that be possible to do it then?
I guess we could, if we held off till January.
I mean, and that was something that was discussed at the retirement plan subcommittee level in terms of having us manage it ourselves versus having our financial advisors, pension financial advisors manage the process versus a hybrid process where they did some of the work, we did some of the work.
I think our decision was to throw it back to the Board of Finance.
Right.
And here we are.
Thank you.
Well, it just seems like it's easy to spend $10,000 if you're saving 100. Or
That's why it's so hard to
even
quantify,
20.
Because the town isn't really saving anything, it's the participants, so.
Well, if
it's
the
a 10,000
participants are saving $20,000, but no one's giving me any numbers that suggest it's that
Well, I
big.
guess if you looked
No.
at it from that perspective, if the participants are paying $249, correct, for MetLife, and we went down to Lincoln, that's $150 savings.
And
So
so,
that's
That's what I
that's
was saying, yeah.
$100. Do we have 1,000
if you do-
people enrolled in the plan?
No,
Do we have 100 people enrolled in the plan?
at least, yeah.
We have 200 people in the plan.
It's probably between 1 to 2, yeah.
So $100 times 200 people is $20,000.
Right.
So then we probably should do that.
And it is cumulative too, I mean, it's year after year before paying those fees.
I don't disagree that we should do it. My question is the timing and the source of funding. You referenced the $300,000. I noticed that the Board of Selectmen, where you had made the motion that we use $420,000 to transfer when we approved the budget, that they declined to do that. I'm not sure what that status is, but that 300,000 that you're proposing, I think it's gonna have to go to fill that gap. Or it may go to other things. So my concern is not, is it a good idea? It's a good idea, but if we can do it in-house for 10,000, and save $10,000, that's better for our employees too. And, or if we can do it with departmental savings from end-of-year savings, I'm okay with that, but I'm not okay with it as a transfer or using money from the state, is where I am on this. But I think it's a good idea, and had we have budgeted for it, we could have budgeted for it. The other question I have, I know in the past, some expenses, you can use the funds itself to fund it, 10,000 from the pension fund. Since it's going to be a long-term savings, it's a spending there, it may be worth looking into whether you can use those funds. So my questions go to not, is it a good idea? Yeah, we should do it. The question is when. And I'm always reluctant to do it off budget cycle. If it's a good idea, we should budget for it. That's how I feel.
Are we required to go out to RFQ over every 5 years, or like,
Well, I think
is there
we have
anything
fiduciary
stipulated?
responsibility.
Well, no,
I
that's
don't
my
think anybody's-
question. How long has Mass Mutual been doing it, and how often have we gone out for an RFQ?
Yeah, I don't know when the last time was that we did an RFQ for this particular service. Our professional services, I believe the threshold on the purchasing policy is $50,000 over the life of a contract. So, let's say if we entered into a 5-year agreement with a firm to do this, I do think it's possible that, the value of the fees that they're collecting could definitely exceed that $50,000 over the life of the contract. Again, where it's a little bit different, as Amy said, in most cases, it's actually the employee who's paying the fee as opposed to the town. But I think if we were to sort of uphold the spirit of the purchasing policy and that $50,000 threshold, it's probably safest to do the RFQ.
All right, so the action item, there's a lot of discussion about this, but it seems to me, with just I'll make a couple other comments. I'm not a fan or an advocate of thinking we have $300,000 that we can spend because we are not paying for the teachers' pensions. So that should never be a justification or a source of funds, in my view, for any expense that pops up that was unanticipated. That's going to happen. That happens every year. But we should then figure out whether we just we miss our budget, or we take it out of the excess from the year we're in, or we accept a budget shortfall for the year that we take it out of. So, having said that, I think we probably should go ahead and do this. I think I would definitely investigate Derek's suggestion, which is, back to the point, if the participants are saving more than we're spending for it, it might be an acceptable expense of the fund, although it may be prohibitive, we don't know. It'd be a pretty easy look to do that.
Burke, do you have a
I don't
comment?
think we have a fund.
We don't
per
have
se
a
to
fund
take
that,
out of. We have
right.
these forfeiture
The forfeiture
monies that we
monies.
could look at.
Yeah.
That would be the only appropriate. It isn't like the defined benefit plan where you could expense out of the
Right.
pension fund.
But because this is all their money?
Right.
Individually held, so there's not a fund per se, it's a series of individual accounts, and then we have a forfeiture.
We don't charge those individual accounts any administrative fee?
They're
No.
paying it.
They're paying, the
This is
participants
the
are
fee we're
paying.
talking about that they're paying.
Okay.
Okay.
To see is this the best deal for them.
All right. Well, I'm a strong advocate of these plans versus the defined benefit plans, so I don't want to do anything to discourage anybody from being in those plans. All right, so I guess there are two parts to this, and first is the motion to authorize the $10,000 to have the RFQ done. And then I think we should, at the same time, designate where the money comes from. Do we need to do that?
Yes.
Um,
How long would it take for the RFQ?
Probably a couple months start to finish.
Yeah, well, yeah. If FIA is doing it, it's probably a couple months. But if we went with Lisa's suggestion and we had staff start it in January, it would probably be about, I'd say probably like 4 months. Getting the person onboarded and then going through the process from start to finish.
Question.
Yeah.
When are you expecting to do, close the books for the previous fiscal year?
We're in the process right now. I should have good numbers by the end of August.
So my suggestion would be we table it until we see the close and use the current year savings. I mean, it's not current year, it's previous year's
Right.
savings. And that way it's not a transfer from reserves and it's not using the 300,000.
I'd be an advocate of that as
I
well.
would be
Okay.
as well. And I do like Lisa's suggestion that these things really should be budgeted if we expect them down.
All right, so that would be the suggestion. So the motion would be
To table.
to move effective July 30th to direct fiduciary investment advisors to conduct a formal request for qualifications for record-keeping services for the defined contribution pension plan and the deferred pension plan.
Friendly comment, I would actually change that to a motion to table
Right.
until.
Yeah. We want to see what the
We
final
say-
numbers are
Because there may be
first.
other priorities that you have, and we don't want to do competing
Okay.
priorities. So,
So we don't even need a motion.
We don't
to
need a
table.
motion
We don't need a
then.
motion.
We will table this until our September meeting, okay?
It may be assumed that all these companies are obviously very well rated, but I would like maybe just even a way
I
to.
would expect the FIA to give us that
Well, that-
assurance as
well,
part of
I'm
the
looking, I'm
RFQ.
looking through this and I don't see it here, so.
Yeah.
This,
Well,
I
that's-
would
No,
just
you have to pay
ask for it.
$10,000 for that, Derek.
did we pay anything for that?
I can
No.
look it up online as to what their Moody's rating is. I'm just curious, is it some way to benchmark each
Yeah.
other
So
versus
we
the
would ask,
cost?
we should ask them to do that be part of the
Yeah,
RFQ.
yeah, they,
And they'll actually be coming out at the September meeting as well, so if you have any further questions on it, they'll be here.
Oh, perfect.
Okay,
maybe it's in here, I don't know.
next item is the proposed defined benefit plan investment policy.
So this is the policy that was previously approved by the Retirement Plan Subcommittee, and then come to find out that the pension plans, the oversight belongs to the Board of Finance, so the policy was just updated to give the Board of Finance the authority as opposed to the Retirement Plan Subcommittee.
So the substance of the plan is the same as it was created to be a policy of the subcommittee, but it's been amended to make it a policy of the Board of Finance with some delegation of responsibilities. This is all per the MOU, right? Okay. So the motion would be to adopt this defined benefit plan investment policy as revised and presented.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Passed. All right. The next action item is recommended appointment to the Retirement Plan Subcommittee.
So this is also something that is now, per the MOU, a duty of the Board of Finance. The recommendation comes from the Board of Selectmen who perform the interviews, and they are recommending Mr. Thomas Potter to the Retirement Plan Subcommittee, and you all have final approval.
Is he coming tonight, do you know?
Not that I'm aware of.
I personally know Tom Potter, and I generally know his qualifications, and I would highly recommend him.
Anyone else know him or speak to him? I don't either.
He works for Aetna, now CVS. There.
I
Very
guess a
fine
policy, I mean, I'm going to support this, but in terms of your process, do we want to be a little bit more involved in the process if it's our appointment? And I don't know the answer to that, but I just put that out there.
Did anybody interview him?
The Personnel Subcommittee did, right?
Right.
So the personal subcommittee interviewed approximately 7 candidates who were interested, all of whom had some relevant experience. And this was the individual that there was consensus around.
I'd probably suggest that in the future, for people that we have to approve, it would be helpful if we had an opportunity to interview, or at least one or two members of our board has a chance to meet with, or, but I think based on their recommendation, I would be still willing to take a motion to appoint Thomas Potter.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? All right. Next is the draft debt policy. Well, you want to do this? Go ahead.
Sure. So this is I think the last time the Board of Finance had adopted a debt policy was back in 1989. During research of putting together the most current draft policy and looking at charter language, it was actually determined that the Board of Selectmen has the purview of the debt policy, and it's actually their policy. So as part of past practice, the Board of Finance had the oversight over the debt policy, and that was kind of like an understanding of just how it was. So tonight, the staff is requesting feedback from the Board of Finance on the updated policy, and then it will be brought forth to the Board of Selectmen at their next meeting.
So, there's been, I've talked quite a bit about this, and I actually think that there really has been nothing that's happened by charter amendment or anything to change what is the general practice of how we determine how much debt we should have and who actually approves it. The Board of Selectmen have always approved it, but it's always been with the recommendation of the Board of Finance. I see no conflict in either the way it's written in the charter or the way we've done it in the past of the Board of Finance having its own debt policy. We're responsible ultimately for the budgets, for the cash flow and balancing those budgets, and that requires that we take a position on how much debt we should have and how it should be repaid. If the Board of Selectmen feels that they should create their own policy, then they should, but this is a policy of the Board of Finance as it relates to debt. And so I would suggest we update our policy, and Lisa has done some work on that, and it includes the concept of us recommending to the Board of Selectmen what we think the debt policy should be, or the issuance of bonds. Sort of inherent in approving the capital improvement projects and the overall capital budgets, which the Board of Finance has a key role in doing. So to say we can't have a debt policy seems both inconsistent with practice and inconsistent with the way we actually govern the town. And I'm not at all suggesting that we have the power to issue debt on our own, but we certainly should be in a position to influence that.
I think that's shared by the Board of Selectmen as well. They weren't aware of the charter language either,
Right.
so this is a surprise to everybody.
I would just add, in approving the budgets, we do it subject to compliance with the Board of Finance policies, so it makes sense to have a policy in place. So I concur with your assessment, and that makes a lot of sense. I did have a couple questions. This draft was actually written by Board of Finance members. I saw that you had cut out some things, but I didn't see any additions. Were any additions made?
I don't think there was any additions made. I took your draft and kind of reworked it a little bit and just put it into a different format, and then I moved things around a little bit.
Right, but in terms of substance, I didn't see additions. I saw a few,
I don't think there was anything. The only thing I can think of is, I'm not sure if there was a change on the minimum threshold of $1 million to
There
go
was.
out to bond. And that was recommended by our bond consultant. So if anything, I think that might have been the only change.
Perfect. And so then the second question is, did our bond consultant review the policy?
did.
Okay.
Got his
Just,
stamp
that's
of
it.
approval.
Can you include that in the minutes, confirm that the Director of Finance confirmed that bond counsel has reviewed the policy for our fiduciary duty? I do have some suggestions to make to turn it into our policy, or if you want me to submit them to Amy or to the board.
Well, so let's think about this. So are we suggesting that there should be two policies?
Well, theoretically, there can't be two policies because whatever policy the Board of Selectmen adopts is Bible, so to speak.
And Bob and Judith will have a actual legal opinion where this is laid out in more detail, prepared. They were anticipating doing that for the August meeting, so we're sorry that we don't have it for the packet this evening. And again, the charter language was a bit of a surprise to all of us, but, you know, if that would be helpful too, we could try to see if either
So-
Bob or Judith could come to the next meeting.
That would be helpful.
Yeah, so why don't we do this? Why don't we propose, well, let's see, I don't want to speak for everyone on the Board of Finance, but I support Lisa's draft that incorporates this concept that it would be, was your draft is for a Board of Finance debt policy?
Yes. Because we can make approvals of the budget subject to this policy. We have that authority. We are the budget-making authority for the town of Simsbury. And we can say you can only fund budgets per our approvals. Then the Board of Selectmen can have their own policy and they can do what they want, but if they're in violation of our policy, they would be in breach of their fiduciary duty or what was approved.
I think that's more of a legal question,
Yeah.
but
Yeah,
the way
so-
that, and especially because it is confusing, because the Board of Finance does have the authority over the budget, and Charter says that Board of Selectmen has the authority over the debt, there's definitely been some
So I would,
questions and confusion
Yeah.
on both the Board of Finance and the Board of Selectmen side, so maybe it is best just
I
to
would
wait
say
for Judith.
the
and-
charter does not say they have authority. They're the ones who vote to approve the debt.
Says they have the
No,
power.
they have the authority to issue.
Yes, they have the power to do so, but if it's limited by the budget-making authority, they can only do so within the limits of what has been approved.
But the budget-making authority,
Is separate.
you all approve the budget, but then the issuance is done after.
But it must be done in compliance with what was approved. You don't have the authority to spend money that isn't authorized.
Right, but like for our fiscal year 19 issuance, that's only going to be impacted in the fiscal year 20 budget.
But they do have the authority in how that money is, so we can approve the monies and the funds, but from how I read it, they have the control over whether, how it's funded.
Right.
I think a good example, you know, for example, there was a difference of opinion between the two boards on how to fund the paving this year.
Right.
And after we discovered this charter issue and went through it with Bob and Judith, the conclusion was in that circumstance, actually, if the Board of Selectmen had wanted to proceed with how to fund it with cash, that is something that they would have been able to do. So that's a difference in terms of how we've been operating versus sort of a strict reading of.
So I would like to hear counsel, because I disagree with that, very much so.
So I think we should propose our budget, our policy, and have council look at it. The Board of Selectmen can look at it, and then we should discuss it at our September meeting. But we should also have our board look at it and be ready to comment. I've seen what Lisa has proposed, but I don't think the rest of you have. It's not materially different than the proposed town Board of Selectmen policies.
If I could, they actually have not, because this is such a new and emerging issue, they have not even looked at the policy yet.
The Board of Selectmen yet?
Correct, they have not set up a work group.
Okay,
They've not looked
so
at
let's
it.
not show it to them. We'll I'll ask Lisa to share it with our board and take comments. And let's give ourselves a week to make comments back to me and to Lisa on the draft. And if we are in general agreement, not approving it, but in general agreement, we will send it to council for review. And then we'll have a more fulsome discussion at our September meeting about it.
Just one question. You had put 7% debt service, and we are at 6.7 currently. So
Right.
and I just want to reflect our board's position, so I wanted to point that out. From my perspective, it should be 6.7, because that's what we've authorized.
So the old debt policy had between 5 and 7%, and I think this reads not to exceed 7%, and that was a recommendation by bond consultant. Where's the 7%?
Now, I appreciate that, but this board is only authorized not to exceed 6.7. So we should,
So if that's a change that you want to make
change
to
in
the
the
current
policy.
policy, that's fine.
So let's bracket that number in the draft.
I am flexible.
I
there,
hear
but
what
I
you're
do
saying,
want to point it out.
Lisa, I hear what you're saying, but I think you know, the last one lasted 30 years. We need a policy that hopefully doesn't last 30 years, but that is flexible enough, and that's why the bond council would counsel
Yeah.
not, a not to exceed number rather than a,
Formal,
to a decimal point number, because,
That's just what we have. I mean, we've already voted on that, so I was just putting in the number that we had. I actually agree with the 7%, but we have not.
all right, so that'll be an action, so we will need to act on that to, if that's what we, the 6.7 that we have approved is less than the 7% that's
okay.
in the policy, so it's okay.
right, we don't have to spend 7%.
Right, exactly.
We just can't spend more than 7%.
If as a board, we decide to go to 6-7, that's fine. But
But then
with
change
that,
the
as long as we
policy.
don't exceed
Right.
7, right?
Let's be sure that the words in the agreement match what we just said, or in the policy. All right? We've kicked 2 cans down the road. But with progress, we're making progress. All right, state budget discussion.
So this is just an update as to where the state landed compared to the Simsbury grant estimates. There's a little chart under the summary of submission. The Connecticut adopted budget, we are looking at a $10,000 in excess to our favor. And then just noted below that the teacher's retirement contribution, we had $304,000, of which that did not go through on the state side, so that is a savings in the fiscal year 20 budget. The overall savings to the general fund alone is about $310,000.
What is the status of the Board of Selectmen's decision
Yeah.
to table the transfer?
It's still tabled.
What
It's
does
what?
that,
It's still tabled.
what does that, are we now out of, did we then deliver an unbalanced budget?
No, it doesn't matter whether the funds came from, I forget what it was off the top of my head. We took it from fund balance or we reduced the mill rate assumption. Either way, there's no impact to the budget.
You didn't
It's
have the
same end
authority
result.
to reduce the mill rate assumption, only the Board of Finance did, so it didn't come from that.
But didn't the Board of Finance send the budget to referendum with the interest rate, the tax collection rate assumption at more than what it normally was?
We didn't increase their assumption on tax collection. What's that?
We didn't reduce it.
Well, we have the minutes which show what we did. We can look that up.
Let's go back, let's go back and be crisp on this, because honestly, I can't remember.
We didn't increase our collection.
Collection rate to 99, yes, we did.
At the minutes, that was at the May meeting after the referendum, though.
That's when we set the mill rate is after the referendum, so we wouldn't have done it before
Oh,
then.
wait.
We did not increase the collection rate.
Oh, no, you're right. It says the
Because
motion.
we definitely voted against that.
Yeah, it says Ms. Moira
Oh, yeah.
Moira
Yeah, I
made
made
a
the motion.
motion to set the mill rate
Yeah.
at 37.32 using a collection rate of 98.5,
Because we
so we
just-
didn't change
So then
it.
the
Right.
difference was coming out of fund balance.
The referendum, the budget that went to the referendum doesn't designate a mill rate or a collection rate.
Right.
Right, but there was.
That was
It's
the
an expense
determination
budget.
made.
At the second public
Right.
hearing, that you were at that time using a different assumption rate and weren't planning to use funds out of fund balance to offset the mill rate. So at that second public hearing, that was sort of the outcome, if you will, that came from your meeting. That's what was discussed within the context of the referendum, but then following that,
Okay, but-
you changed courses and said, okay, no, we'll actually offset the mill rate with a point of use of.
But that required a recommendation of the Board of Selectmen, which they declined to make. So my concern is that,
Right. There's no issue with the recommendation. We were just going through a bond rating period, and the bond rating agency, over our phone call, expressed they don't like to see money taken from fund balance, and so the Board of Selectmen wanted to make sure that that motion wasn't made until after we achieved our bond rating.
that was pointed out when the decision was made, the initial motion failed not to do that, and this was the second motion.
Right. So our decision is still to ask for the fund transfer, correct?
Right.
Right.
And so we're waiting for the Board of Selectmen to act on that. And
Right.
what are they waiting for to act on that?
Well, we do have another meeting coming up soon, so we could bring it back to them.
And if they fail to act on it, what happens then?
in discussions. I don't believe that there is any intent to not to act on it.
But what if they don't?
Or they turn it down.
Well, I guess we could cross that bridge if we get there, but again, I think the
Yeah.
initial discussions they had was not indicating that.
And then I guess ultimately it stands to the Board of Finance decision since they have say over the budget.
Of course, at the end of the day, we're going to transfer the funds, and then the budget will be $300,000 over because we had the $300,000 contingency
Right,
for state mandated that's not happening.
right.
And it's unlikely that the funds would actually be needed because almost likely, again, we sort of know the anticipated collection rate is 99.5%. So revenues are most likely going to well exceed expenditures, which makes that transfer
Unnecessary.
unnecessary.
Mhm.
That's the reality.
It's 98.5, right?
98.5,
Right.
Right.
it's what we used, which
You said 99, right?
creates the need to transfer from the general fund.
Yeah.
All right. Amy, note to self and all of us that in October or November, we need to start already, I hate to say this, start thinking about the tri-board meeting and setting ourselves up for guidance. We need, as a Board of Finance, to have a full discussion about that before we, at least one or two meetings before we have the tri-board meeting. And one of those agenda items should be this question of collection rate, and should we continue the practice we've had for several years of assuming a rate lower than our actual experience? Right?
Amy, where are we with our reserves? Do you have an update on that? I didn't,
For this year?
For
For the
fiscal year
year just
19?
ended?
just today.
I don't have that offhand.
Wasn't there a $400,000 overage? Where did I see that? Where'd that, did I make that up?
I think you made that up. I don't have final results yet.
I thought we were projecting for the June 2019 year end.
I think that might have been some projections during budget, but as far as year-end results and things coming in, I don't know what that number is yet.
You don't have an estimate yet?
Okay.
Not yet. Still closing out
It
the,
will
Well,
be
make it
fixed,
work out
though.
that way, will you?
okay, I'll try.
We're not looking at a deficit, though.
No.
Revenues were significantly up due to implementation of the tax sale policy.
I didn't make that.
And then building.
Nobody else saw
solar
that.
project laws is significant. So our revenues are performing better than.
We didn't exceed our budget.
Right.
All right, but not now.
We're doing year end close.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
That we've exceeded.
Year and close, we did not exceed, but expenses did not exceed.
No, we
the
did not.
budget.
Okay. All right, then the communications, the SAS 114 audit communication letter.
Yep, so this is just your standard yearly communication that you see every year that outlines the town's responsibilities, the auditor's responsibilities, what they're going to review, what they're not going to review, a timeline of the audit, any engagement team contact information that they provide. And then they just included some supplemental information on best practices and possible changes in accounting standards that could be coming down the pike.
Question, though.
Yeah,
We had discussed, and just to remind you, if it's possible to please get, and I don't know if it needs to be done in executive session or general session, of our cybersecurity, given the Bitcoin ransom threat and other security, to get an update from the town as to where we are and what steps we need to be doing. If we could do that in one of the next few months, that would be much appreciated.
So just an update on the overall cybersecurity.
That was right, 300, didn't we allocate? like
Yeah, we
350
had
grand for
allocated a
that?
bunch of money to implement some cybersecurity. If we can get an update, make sure that we're, what steps we're taking, what processes. The report actually outlines some stuff we should consider doing, then perhaps we should think about that for the budget as well.
Is that something that you just wanted from internal staff or a review from Bloom Shapiro as well? Because they do look at our IT.
Internal staff would be for now. Then the question, the follow-up would be, do you need another internal review based on the Bloom Shapiro comments?
Okay.
All right, and then the last is the S&P bond rating report. Good reading.
Congratulations.
Any other comments? Yeah.
Just
We-
congratulations.
We pat ourselves on the back again. Okay. Any other items for discussion, or?
Rob, you are on the calls with bond rating, right?
This time I was not. I had done them, I did them when you were first select person, but I wasn't invited this time, so.
Oh, I would encourage you to invite the chair.
Sorry about that. We didn't know that that was past practice.
Yeah,
Because I was about to congratulate you
For the great job that I
For your
did?
persuasiveness, yes.
Let's
You're
table
there in
that.
spirit.
Actually, he is very good. Having sat in with him, he is very
perhaps
good. So
my
it's
not
worth-
being there was what got us the,
Keep it up.
yeah, thanks. I can do that. I'm good at that. All right.
Motion to adjourn?
No,
Now we have executive session.
executive session.
Oh,
You actually adjourn first, you adjourn first, and
Yeah,
then
and then we-
the discussion
Okay.
happens after.
okay.
So move, adjourn.
Second.
All in favor of adjourning, say aye. Aye.
I'm out, you're in, I'm gone,
Okay.
have a good one.
And then,
You'd ask SCTV to turn off now.
yeah, so we have to turn the television off in SCTV, please?